The Big Ten is looked at by most to be the second best conference heading into this college football season. Now, it could be the first. It's going to be interesting to find out. But one of the most fascinating parts of the new additions, being Oregon, USC, Washington, and UCLA, is do these teams translate into the way football's played in the Big Ten? We do know the game is won and lost on the line of scrimmage. You feel like Oregon feels like a pretty good fit. Dan Lanning has basically built a team that could mold into whatever conference they wanted with what they return. Then you look at Ohio State. Ryan Day, one of the winningest coaches in college football, yet on somewhat of a hot seat because he's lost to Michigan 3 times in a row, and Ohio State hasn't been able to win a national championship. Some more big questions are, can Penn State finally get over the hump now that divisions are gone? Or will Iowa finally be able to complete a forward pass, which would complete their team? But we have some new coaches as well. Kirk Cignetti at Indiana is very interesting. Northwestern has their head man who got forced to be the interim, taking over with his first ever head coaching job officially there at Northwestern. And the storylines are aplenty. But if I had to say one thing to everybody involved with the Big Ten, you know, here at Crane & Company, we make predictions. We write down each game, each team, each game, win or loss, so we can cross-reference it. 18 teams. 18 teams in the Big Ten. That makes about as much sense as, I don't know, a campus in Palo Alto or Berkeley being in the Atlantic Coast Conference. But it's all crazy, and we're getting it all done. This is Crane & Company. David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback. Big year for Michigan.
Not a new addition to the league.
Not a new addition.
Old school.
Old school.
In the league.
One of the original Big Ten, which is almost double. Well, I'm not going to get into that semantics. David, when you look at this conference, obviously with all the teams that are in it now, when you look at the teams that we feel like are going to be at the top, including Oregon, and we're going to get to our predictions here in a minute. We want to know what you think. The most fascinating part of this conference may come in the middle, because, I mean, it is absolutely mashed potatoes when you look around and you see what is, Northwestern going to do this year? What is Maryland going to do this year? Nebraska, could this be the year that they come on? There's storylines up and down, but I guess when you have 18 teams, there's going to be storylines.
Yeah, there is. Man, it feels weird to have 18 teams in this league. Again, I think that you're talking about the middle of the conference. I need the middle of the Big Ten to play better football. Yeah. That's what I've been hoping for the last few years, because it has been a bit more top-heavy. And you can just see this, like, fans, you can go out and print off the schedule grid just like we do and check and X every single game. When you do it for the SEC, it's a little bit different in the middle of the pack in terms of, like, man, these teams could really play spoiler at the top in a way that we hadn't seen in the Big Ten for quite some time. Now, what gets really interesting to me is when you start talking about Oregon and USC and Washington coming into the league. And I think that there's going to be a parallel, especially between Oregon and USC going into the Big Ten and Texas and Oklahoma this year going into the SEC. And what I mean by that is I think that all 4 of those programs are going to have a lot of success in their new conference. Talking about 4, really blue blood college football programs. But I think Oregon's going to come in right away and be able to have more success, just like Texas, I think, is going to have more success this season in the SEC, even though USC is going to be just fine in the years moving forward, as well as Oklahoma moving forward in the SEC.
Blaine, what would it take for you? And again, we grew up in SEC country, but when you look at the numbers, you look at the draft picks, you look at the national championships, I think it's safe to say the SEC has been the best conference for a while. What would it take for the Big Ten to overtake the SEC in your eyes? Is it what David is saying in the middle of the conference, start to play better, or maybe be more of a force in the non-conference?
Yeah, I would agree with David on that. I would want to see more teams from the middle of the conference start making a little noise in the game of college football, and some more national championships. And a lot of people, it depends on how you weigh it, I guess. Do you look at the draft?
I think that's one of the components.
I think that's a big component. So I would agree with David. It's all about the middle class of your conference. How good is the middle class of your conference? And I think the SEC has the best middle class.
So that's interesting, because I think that if you just have the champion, that would be enough. Right, like if that's the same question that you would,
I think that holds the most weight. Like, to me, that component would hold the most
to me,
weight.
If you just said, like, hey, you can have one of these 3 things, okay, and that can either be the national champion every single year, the most NFL draft picks every year, or you're the best top to bottom in the middle of the conference and the bottom of the conference is really good. I think you take the champ.
And I think now, even with
champ,
the champ, I agree. And now even with the playoff, it almost hits even harder, because you're going to have to go through a lot more people. It's not a one-off game. You're going to go play somebody in the Natty. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to roll through different teams in the playoffs to kind of prove your worth.
Well, and you may end up, we have scenarios, you may have 2 conference teams playing each other in the national championship, something that we haven't seen in a long time. But David, to your point before we get into predictions, and the phone line's going to open up 2:45 p.m. Central. We're going to stay in the chat too. Y'all know how we do it here at Prediction Week. Hit that subscribe button. I think we're like 3,000 away from 150,000. Let's get that bad boy up to 150 million. But David, if I was doing the components you listed, right? National champion, right? Draft picks, let's say overall record of the conference when you combine it, right? Or average record, however. And then one more. If you wanted to, let's say, bowl wins or something, or head-to-head or something like that, I would put the national champion at 50% of that recipe and then divvy out the other 50% to those three other components.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%.
Sure. That's us as football guys saying that. If you're just the administrators, the only thing you care about is the most money, which that is one category the Big Ten has been winning at in terms of the TV deals. They've been signing the biggest, largest deals for the TV money. So if that's all they care about, that's fine. Football guys want to have the national champions, which they do have the defending national champion right now. They had the first winner of the 14 playoff when the Buckeyes won in 14. But let's all be honest with each other. It was a decade of dominance by the SEC and really Clemson. I mean, Clemson got two of them in those years too. So.
All right, well, here we go. Let's go ahead and bring up mine. Here's what I got. Read them and weep. Sorry, not sorry, as we say here. I've got Oregon, 12-0. The only team I have going undefeated in any of the Power 4 conferences. I got them 12-0. I got them 9-0 in the conference. I got Ohio State 11-1, 8-1 in the conference. I got Penn State 10-2, 8-1 in the conference. Iowa 10-2 and Michigan 10-2. I have both of them 7-2 in the conference. I got Nebraska at 9-3, 6-3, and I feel really, really good about it. I've talked many times on here. Dylan Raiola has been named the starter. Matt Rule, a.k.a. Matt the Builder, they're continuing to build that program up. I think they're going to be better at the skill position. I mean, hell, if they can catch a snap, they'll be better at the skill position. Maryland, 8-4 with Mike Locksley. Very interesting team. I like some of the pieces that they have and some of the pieces they brought in. Their problem has been consistency overall, especially in the big games. Then Jed Fish at Washington, year one. You look at what he brings over there, Will Rogers, and kind of a different system, obviously, than what we saw Michael Penix Jr. last year. I got Washington 8-4, 5-4. That may surprise some people. USC, I got right at 7-5. I think they're over under win total 7.5, something like that. 5-4 in the conference. That defense, I've got to see, even though they moved on from Grinch, I got to see it to believe it. We'll find out a little bit about them against LSU in Vegas week one. Wisconsin, 6-6, 4-5. Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan State, Minnesota, and Northwestern, all 5-7. Like I told you, it is absolute mashed potatoes in the middle of this conference. Then I got UCLA, 4-8. Indiana, 4-8. And I get why some people will, and I've gassed up Cignetti. I love them getting Rourke from Ohio. Feels like 30 of them have played at Ohio, but the man can't stay healthy. I don't trust him to be able to stay healthy throughout the first 4 games of the season, let alone a full season. So I got them 4-8, 1-8 in conference, and then Purdue and Ryan Walters. I like Hudson Card. I don't trust what they have around him in year 2 under Ryan, coming over from Illinois. 3-9, 1-8 in the conference. And guys, when I look at Oregon, and we're going to make our national championship picks tomorrow, who makes the playoff, they're a complete team to me. Obviously you lost Bo Nix, who's now the starter for the Broncos. I think Dylan Gabriel's a great fill-in for Bo Nix. I think there's a lot of similarities they have with each other. I think Bo Nix's arm is stronger. They're both very experienced, but in this Will Stein offense, you're getting the ball out to guys in space quickly. It's almost an extension of the run game. Yes, they lost Bucky Irving. I think Jordan James has a chance to be really special. I love Jay Perry, the D2 running back they had transfer in, and then they get Evan Stewart from Texas A&M to replace Troy Franklin out at X. Hopefully he can get it together off the field because he's got a ton of talent on the field. You bring back Tez Johnson as well, who's incredible in the slot, one of the best slot guys in the country. I think he was top 5 last year in yards after catch, excuse me. Offensive line is going to be really good. Defense, it's Dan Lanning's defense. This is a complete Oregon team. I got Oregon beating Ohio State, David, in the regular season, and then losing to Ohio State.
So that was my question.
In the Big Ten championship game, similar to what we saw in some other conferences, both of them making the playoff. Where it's going to get wonky for me is when you look at Iowa State's schedule, when you look at Penn State's schedule, when you look at Michigan's schedule, I got them all 10-2. I've got Penn State 8-1 in the conference. But I don't have Notre Dame making my playoff, obviously, as I said earlier in the week, having them 9-3. So that creates a very interesting scenario, which we're going to get into tomorrow when I reveal my playoff. But overall, man, I tell you, the Big Ten, it's 18 teams. It's a lot. It gets wonky in the middle. We'll see with Rutgers and Greg Schiano. I'm not as high on them as some others are. I do know, they get Callie McManus from Minnesota, the quarterback there. Minnesota gets New Hampshire's quarterback, Brosmer, which I'm interested to see them. I tell you, David, I mean, I almost feel better about this one than I do about any of the other ones. Even though there's more teams.
So for Penn State, you must have Penn State losing to West Virginia and to the Buckeyes.
Yep, I got Penn State losing to West Virginia, which, by the way, you're looking at Vegas, that thing's dropping like a rock right now. It was 11 when I saw it, down to 10, down to 8.5, and the money's still coming in right now on West Virginia. You can get West Virginia plus 8.5 at -112 as opposed to Penn State minus 8.5 at -110. Outside of that, I think they beat Washington at home. Look on the road, I think they go on the road and beat USC. I think they are the last thing that USC wants to see with that style of play, with how good they are up front. And I've got them winning at Camp Randall against Wisconsin in what I think could be a hell of a game. So, yeah, losing to West Virginia, losing to Ohio State.
So what would put Iowa over Michigan?
This is the problem. You talking about the playoff, or you talking about overall in the standings?
Overall in the standings.
So when you look at, because they don't play each other, I've got Iowa losing at Maryland. I've got Iowa losing at Ohio State. Obviously, I got Michigan losing at Ohio State too. I don't have.
So you must have Michigan losing to the Buckeyes and Oregon.
I've got Michigan losing the Buckeyes and Oregon.
So I wonder if Michigan would be 4 then.
Michigan may be 4. I may need to switch those two.
Quality ones.
But at that point, I mean, neither one are playing for the conference championship.
Neither one are playing. That's the reason I kind of had it up there. They're not playing for the conference championship. I guess the only thing you could say is if you're looking for playoff, when you look at Michigan's schedule, I have them beating Texas right now. So if we're going to take over strength of schedule to put them maybe one of the 35,000 tiebreakers before we flip a coin at a gas station is non-conference opponent strength of schedule. And obviously, even though Iowa does host Iowa State, week 2, a team I got going in 7.
Yeah, we were talking
Michigan,
about that.
We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
What's the state of USC and Lincoln Riley after going 7-5 year 1 in the Big Ten?
Well, they're not going to fire them. I think the heat's going to continue to turn up. I think the question is, and 7-5 is not acceptable at USC, and it shouldn't be, is how much better does the defense look? Does it look like the identity is changing at least a little bit for USC? Do they look tougher? And we're going to find out early because they're going up against an LSU offensive line that may be the best offensive line in the country, definitely a top 3 offensive line in the country. USC got rid of Alex Grinch. I gave Lincoln Riley his props for that. They bring in a guy from UCLA that did a really good job last year, Matt Entz, who was the head coach last year at North Dakota State, who plays Colorado week 1 this year, is now the linebackers coach at USC. They got bigger on the D-line, but I caution people, just because you got bigger doesn't mean you got better. I've seen, and I made the mistake of signing guys out of high school because they were big, hoping they'd develop into something, and sometimes the biggest guys don't play very well. Because a lot of it is this game is about leverage, but there are some big guys that don't play like they're big. So I got to see USC's guys play like they're big. I got the Trojans losing to LSU in Vegas. I got them losing at Minnesota. I got them losing at Michigan. I got them losing against Penn State at home and then at Washington because, again, Washington knows USC. This isn't some brand new matchup. They don't know each other. I think that's kind of one of Jed Fish's staple wins here in year 1 there for the Huskies.
So that's 7-5 for you with a win over Notre Dame.
With a win over Notre Dame.
All right, so 2 more questions here. One, who are the 2 losses for Iowa?
The 2 losses for Iowa, I've got at Ohio State, and I think Maryland upsets them late in the year. The game before the last game, Mike Loxley, and then they always sneak up on somebody. You remember last year against Michigan, it was weird for a while. I definitely don't think it was Michigan.
Yeah, and that is one thing about this conference. Like, look, there's still really good football players, football coaches, and football teams all throughout the conference, and that's how it should be. I mean, I remember being told, verbatim, we got out with a win over the Juice Williams-led Illinois team.
I used to watch this
at night, Juice play. And it was like, you win by 3, you're thrilled. Get on the bus and go home, right? And so that's what this conference can deliver, especially when all these programs are cooking on all.
Well, like Luke Altmaier's a good player for Illinois. Like Illinois lost
players.
Illinois can beat a lot of teams that are in front of them. The teams I had the hardest time with was Wisconsin. One, because I do think they're going to be better, but I don't trust Van Dyke.
Well, the schedule got harder too. The schedule was set up so well for them last year, and they did not.
And that's why I picked them to do what I thought they were going to do last year. They got close, but didn't do it. I want to go over my Nebraska losses real quick. I've got Nebraska losing at Ohio State. I've got them losing at USC, and I've got them losing at Iowa last game of the year. Nebraska going 9-3, 6-3 would be awesome. I got them starting 7-0, boys. I got them beating UTEP, Colorado at home, UNI at home, Illinois at home. That's 4. Then at Purdue, then they get Rutgers at home. Then you go to Indiana, and then you go to Ohio State for your first
Can you
loss.
imagine going 9-3 with the young quarterback who's going to be coming back? All the momentum that it would build off of?
It would be awesome. It would be awesome.
Again, I still think that the Nebraska-Colorado game is going to be one of the more interesting ones in the country. Not that it will be so impactful for the college football playoff. That's why we didn't include it in our list a week or so ago. But I do think that, hey, Nebraska has a chance to tag them back at home, and Shedeur Sanders is still going to come in with the ability to freak out, in any game.
Without a doubt.
Anybody because of that talent.
Without a doubt. I tell you who else was interesting, Dave, before we move on. Michigan State and Jonathan Smith coming over from Oregon State
about them.
with Aiden
I got them better than you do.
as the quarterback there. And they got some other pieces that are somewhat interesting. It's just up front. That's where I'm having the hardest time with Michigan State on that defensive line. How's the pass rush going to be? I've got them going 5-7, 3-6, which I don't think is an awful year one for Jonathan Smith. I got them losing at Maryland. Got them losing at Boston College. I've got them losing at Ohio State at home, at Oregon, and then Iowa at home. That's a tough – this 4-game stretch, Ohio State at home, at Oregon, Iowa at home, and at Michigan, that's incredibly tough. We've talked about it a couple times. I got to drop on all 4 of that. Then I got them finishing 3-1 with a loss at Illinois to Bielema and the boys out there.
Another thing about here, so you have 5 teams with double-digit wins or better. That's another thing about this conference expansion. Like, if you have 18 teams, even if the conference still remains top-heavy with some of the old school brands they have, with some of the new brands they have, well, at some point you've added enough teams so that there's still 5 potential playoff
and I tell people, like in the other conferences, like with Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, I'm like, look, you're adding, yes, you're going to add people that go to the bottom, but you're also going to add people that go to the top.
So you got 5 potential playoff teams.
I got 5 potential playoff teams coming out of the Big Ten. Right now, I'm leaning 4, possibly 3 get in. So that's kind of where I see it.
Okay, so bring up my Big Ten graphic here. This is how I see the Big Ten season playing out this year. And if the Big Ten could get 4 playoff teams in the 12, I think that would be a massive win. I'm going to start at the bottom like I did yesterday. 4-8 for both UCLA and Purdue. I think it's going to be tough sledding. UCLA will be fine as a brand, but with Chip Kelly leaving this year, that's just how I see it happening. I wanted to talk to you about Washington, because right now I think you have Washington 8-4. I think it's going to be tough for them to even make a bowl game this year. Now, I really like Jed Fish. They bring in Jed Fish. I've got them 5-7 right now because they return the fewest starters in the country, but it's not just the starters. I think I read that they have 3 starters coming back in the 2 deep. So that's a lot of new faces. Will Rogers, he was almost the all-time SEC passing yards leader, so it's not like they're going to be bad at the quarterback position. 5-7 right now for me. Let's see if they can punch above their weight there. Also 5-7, Indiana and Northwestern and Illinois. Kirk Cinetti was a great hire. So who's he going to come in and beat that he's not supposed to? That's a question there. And then David Braun could have been coach of the year last year.
I don't disagree with that.
Let's all be honest with each other. Well, they were 8-5 last year at Northwestern, a year after the scandals that they had. That was an incredible coaching job. Can they remain that good, or are they going to take a step back? And I think Mike Wright's going to be playing quarterback.
Yeah, see,
that's Vanderbilt.
He is. If he can just throw it decent,
which I don't think people.
Which I don't think people realize. Like, Mike Wright can. Really
He's a good football player.
Like run,
roll,
like
run.
He can
run.
He hit for me on Vanderbilt, Hawaii several seasons ago.
It turned to at some point with Vanderbilt, they were like, here, snap it to Mike, run.
Yeah. Brett Bielema, Illinois, a little bit of a step back last year. Can he prove that was the anomaly? Or is that going to be the new trend for him? I got him 5-7 right now. Michigan State, this is the one I really wanted to talk about. 6-6 right now for me, but that's a combination of 2 things. One, Jonathan Smith, great hire, and if Aiden Childs can play like he's projected to play, he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the conference, if not the country. This year, though, they're the only team, and this is Michigan State, they're the only team in the conference that has to play Michigan, Oregon, and the Buckeyes. All 3 of them. That's tough sledding right now. 6-6, but I think that the future is still bright, and Michigan State can be one of those teams in the conference that says, hey, we're going to play power football year in and year out and be relied upon. I also have 6-6 for Minnesota and Wisconsin, similar to what you were saying with Wisconsin. The schedule was so much more favorable a year ago, and now you bring in Tyler Van Dyke. I think it's going to be a tough go. 7-5 for Rutgers right now, and I have them starting 7-0. 7-0.
I actually hope
7-0.
Because I always root for
if you're looking to bookmark picks that I'm wrong about, maybe look at Rutgers and how I have
Callie McManus isn't a bad player.
Callie McManus, I think like he's not that far from being a guy who could be a backup on Sundays.
Yeah, well, with their schedule, David, like I mean that, and I think they had the 16th overall rated defense last year. I mean, you got Howard, Akron at Virginia Tech. I got you losing that. Washington at home, at Nebraska, Wisconsin at home, UCLA at home. You go to USC, you get Minnesota at home, you got Maryland on the road, Illinois at home. If I had to pick one schedule, I would probably take Rutgers.
It's all about the schedules. That's why I have them starting so well. And maybe I'm higher on Callie McManus than I should be, but look, I got Rutgers 7-5 right now. One more thing I wanted to say about Minnesota's quarterback. You were talking about Max Brosmer.
Yeah.
Played quarterback at Centennial High School in Roswell, across the street from my house before we moved here.
That's wild.
That's the high school whose marching band was playing the night my son was born. When Adam was born.
No way.
So
that's
he's
wild.
playing quarterback for Minnesota now, replaces Callie McManus, who goes to Rutgers. Let's keep rolling, though. Maryland 7-5. Got Nebraska 8-4 right now, and that's with that win over Colorado. Even that would be huge.
Yep.
I mean, you got them 9-3. I've got it 8-4 right now. And that's because I have them dropping that game at Southern Cal, which I'm not sure if you had them losing at Southern Cal.
I've got Nebraska losing at Southern Cal.
Okay, but you had Southern Cal 7-5. I got them better than that right now at 8-4, and that's including a loss against LSU in the opener. Win that one, I think Lincoln Riley could be looking at a 9-win season. How they get to 10, I'm not sure, with having to play Penn State, and they're going to have to play Michigan on the road. You got Notre Dame last week of the season, which I have them winning that one. We'll see.
David, let me ask you this before you get to your top. There's some games in here that I feel like are just awful matchups for USC when they're getting played as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at Maryland, that's a sneaky bad matchup.
I have them losing it.
But not as bad. And then you go to Minnesota, which I don't think Minnesota plays the type of ball that USC really wants to see.
I have USC winning that.
You go to Washington late in the year. That'll be kind of interesting to see. But again, they know Washington. There's some landmines in here, and that's not counting at Michigan. That's not counting Notre Dame at the end, and that's not counting Penn State at home.
Yeah, for me right now, the 8-4
to me.
The 8-4 for USC is a loss against LSU, a loss at Michigan, a loss against Penn State at home, and a loss at Maryland.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, look, for this to happen, you'd have to beat Notre Dame. You still have to beat Nebraska. You got to go on the road and beat Washington. Then you'd have to, hold serve against Rutgers at home, like we were talking about. And UCLA is still a rivalry game. And that'll be at UCLA. So 8-4 right now for me. 9-3 for Iowa. This is really where it starts to get interesting, because the way we had talked about Iowa's schedule, I mean, it could be anywhere from 11-1 to 8-4.
They're inverse LSU. Inverse LSU.
Inverse LSU. I do think that they're going to play better on offense. I know all these reports are coming out that Cade McNamara is playing so terrible in scrimmages that he's going to get replaced, and that's going to end up being better for the program so they can start the backup. Again, I watched Cade McNamara lead Michigan to their first college football playoff appearance.
It can't be as bad as Penn.
He's a capable player, and I think they're still going to be solid on defense. I have it 9-3 right now, but I don't think that's good enough to get into the college football playoff, and this gets into my top 4. Right now, Michigan 10-2, and this is the thing. I have Michigan beating Texas at home right now, losing to Oregon, and then losing at the very end of the season to the Buckeyes, which I think is very fair in a year where you are going to have all new starters on the offensive line, a new quarterback, and a brand new head coach when Jim Harbaugh has returned to the NFL. That would be a heck of a season, and I think 10-2 gets Michigan into the college football playoff. You're not going to be favored in any of those 3 big games that I just talked about, Oregon, Buckeyes, and Texas. So you're going to have to figure out a way to win one of those and then win every single game in the Big Ten that you're already supposed to win and where you will be favored. I have some news out of the Michigan camp right now. It sounds like Jack Tuttle, who was in the quarterback running, has been injured for most of camp, so it's come down between Alex Orji and Davis Warren. Alex Orji's been running out with the first team for the 2 scrimmages that they've had against the number 1 defense. I've been asking, hey, is this going to be more of a Joe Milton 2.0, or can he look more like a Jalen Milroe has at Alabama?
So what you're telling me is, game 1, we're going to see an orgy on Michigan's field.
Well, hopefully in the end zones. because that means he's scored a lot. Just because of his ability to run better than Joe Milton, I've been told from people who've been watching practice that, if he ends up being the guy, like we've been talking about, heavy dose of run, heavy dose of quarterback run, but that he has improved in the air, and so he's still going to have to beat somebody out the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan's going to be even smushier from a mindset than they were last year. I know Ward can run, like you said. It's, again, can he throw well enough? And I see this. It's funny. There's different levels to it, but I have the same questions about Alex Orji that I have about Avery Johnson at Kansas State. There's multiple instances of, hey, we know these guys can run well. Even Peyton Thorne at Auburn. At least from what I've seen, Peyton Thorne runs it better than he throws it. You've got to prove it to me that you can make big-time throws, right? So he doesn't have to be Drew Brees or Joe Montana for this offense to work the way that their offensive line head coach, who played our line and Coach Moore, wants it to work. I think it's just going to be smushier. That's why I like the under. That's why that Fresno Michigan over-under has gone from 48.5 down to 45.
Well, another good
keeps
thing
making me nervous.
For whoever the guy ends up being as the signal caller for Michigan is Kirk Campbell, too. The quarterback coach, the offensive coordinator, one of the best developers that we're going to see in the Big Ten. And then the best thing that's going to help the new offensive line is, one, they're new starters, but they're not new guys. And two, the head coach now was your offensive line coach in Sharon Moore. So 10-2 would be a heck of a year. Figure out a way to win one of those other games you're not supposed to. Now, all of a sudden, you could find yourself potentially in the Big Ten championship. 11-1 right now for Penn State, which may be better than they deserve, but I have them winning the West Virginia game that you have them losing. I think they do get throttled by the Buckeyes, even though that game is at home. Then I have them winning all the rest. They dodge Oregon. They dodge Michigan. They don't have to play Iowa. Right now it's 11-1, which would be a college football playoff.
11-1, you're
for sure. And I think Drew Aller's going to play better. That's the way that I
hope you're right, David. I hope you're right.
And then that gets me to number 2 and number 1. I think the Buckeyes go 11-1, losing that game at Oregon in the regular season. Oregon runs the table 12-0, and right now I have the Buckeyes beating Oregon in the Big Ten championship to avenge that loss, and here's why. If you're Ryan Day and you ask for $13 million to keep your roster intact and go into the portal and make it better, and then they give you 20, it's not good enough just to beat Michigan. We've been saying, if he doesn't beat Michigan for a 4th time in a row, that he's not going to be the head coach there. That, to me, is not good enough. You got to win the conference. You can't let Oregon come in and win the conference, and you can't let Michigan come into your house and beat you. You got to really make some noise when you get $20 million and you got Urban Meyer out here saying it's the best roster that we've seen in a decade. Okay, you're going to have to prove it. Go win the conference.
There's another caveat to that, too. I just want to, add, Blaine, before we get to you. Ohio State, if it works out the way me and you have it working out, where they're playing Oregon at 11-1, having just beat Michigan, will be coming off that emotional high. They should be super duper confident. The one blemish on your schedule, not only do you get to play them again, but you can make your guys' records the same, which means their year wasn't better than yours. It was about even. I think Ohio State will be in a really good place after beating Michigan for the first time in 3 years, getting that monkey off your back a little bit, because that whole week leading up to that is just going to be Michigan this, Michigan that, Michigan in a wiffle ball bat. Ohio State gets over that. I think they're going to play with a lot more confidence. I think it'll get Will Howard even more confident, and I think he may make a couple of those throws.
We'll see. This is definitely not what is going to happen. But
a
boy can dream, huh? Should I go top to bottom or bottom to top?
Minnesota 4-8.
I'm more of a top guy myself. PJ Fleck, this vote is going in reverse.
No, not for PJ.
All right, 4-8 for Minnesota fans. Sorry, not sorry. 1-8 in conference. Purdue, more like Perdon't. 2-10 and 1-8 in conference. Indiana, new coach, same story. 5-7. 2-7, Northwestern 4-8. Guess you need to turn the lights back on. 7.
You're on fire right now. Keep going.
4-8, but I believe. All right, not this year. It's going to take some time, but a good coach. Maryland, look, you couldn't do it too, his little brother. It's never going to work out. Give me Maryland 5-7, 2-7. UCLA, your coach, so you know where your college is. 4-8, 2-7. Illinois 5-7, 3-6. Some hope there. We never know. We'll see with Illinois. Washington, damn, it's all over. 7-5.
7-5. It's over.
It's over, dog.
It's all
you
over.
went to the playoffs. You went to the penthouse to the outhouse, buddy. 7-5, 4-5. Hey, Wisconsin 8-4, 6-3. Luke, tickle my fickle. I mean, at this point, Van Dyke, maybe believe, couple pieces at running back.
You believe in Van Dyke?
Some big wins. Hey, went to the retreat. It was really dark. Got his phone out. Texted a couple exes. Heard it went well. Heard he's gonna have a better season this year. USC. All right, 7-5. 6-3 in conference. Some key wins. Miller Moss, your starting quarterback. Your defense is still trash. It is a new story. And I'm bullish on these guys. Give me Rutgers 8-4.
Gosh, I love
Yes. 8-4.
Yes.
6-3. They basically bring back everybody on their football team. All right? Top 10 in production brought back. You get a new quarterback. I believe in your head coach. And how are you built? You're built defensively. So 8-4. And your schedule is just beautiful. It's absolutely poetry in motion. 9-3. All right, for Penn State, Sandusky and the boys. 7-2. I got you losing to West Virginia, Ohio State, and Wisconsin.
Okay. Oh, you got Wisconsin beating them.
Wisconsin, Iowa, 10-2.
Swoosh fest.
Oh, excuse me. Don't let me skip over Nebraska because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. 9-3, 6-3. Dylan and the boys come back with that defense and have a better year. Penn State 9-3, 7-2 in conference. Iowa 10-2, 7-2 in conference. Michigan's 9-3, 7-2 in conference. Ohio State 11-1, 8-1. Ohio and Oregon.
Okay.
12-0,
Okay.
9-0 in conference.
Who's winning?
And they win the Big Ten championship.
13-0, number
20
one
mils.
seed.
Hey, 20 mils, great, but I don't know if y'all met Phil Knight.
Hey, let me ask you this. So you got Georgia going undefeated, right?
Correct.
So, and you got Georgia winning the SEC championship over Ole Miss, right? Or
No,
you
I
got
have
Ole
Ole
Miss
Miss
beating them.
winning.
So Oregon would be your number one overall seed.
Correct.
Okay.
Wow.
I like
Don't ask me a lot of questions about this either.
No, we're going to ask a lot
Let's
of
get in the
questions.
chat.
First of all,
Yeah.
hold on. Wisconsin 8-4. Who are they beating? You know they play Alabama,
8
right?
of them.
Who
Yes,
is
David,
Wisconsin
I know
beating?
Wisconsin plays Alabama. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
All
right.
Beat them upside down.
Western Michigan, South Dakota, Purdue, Rutgers, Northwestern, Penn State, Nebraska, Minnesota.
Okay. So
Okay.
you have So that's one of Penn State's 3 losses. The other one being Buckeyes, and the
and
other
West
one being
Virginia.
West Virginia.
If they go on the road and beat Nebraska,
Interesting.
like that
Okay,
would be a hell of a job by Luke.
So who does
Fickell.
Iowa lose to?
Iowa loses 2.
Let's see here.
They lose 2.
I've got them losing to Ohio State and
Nebraska and Ohio State.
Nebraska 2. Interesting. And then your
Very
3 losses for Michigan are the 3 games I talked about?
Yeah, your 3 most important games. Sorry. I didn't. Sorry. Yeah, it sucks. My bad. Love you.
Oh.
Hey, everybody. Really appreciate you watching. Make sure you hit that like and hit that subscribe button so we pop up on your notifications every time we go live. Appreciate it.